Well, hi, everyone. I'm Dina Meredith, the Communications Manager at BPA. Thanks for joining us for this afternoon's session on Newsroom Innovation. This is the final webinar in our three-part Google Tools training series. Most of you who are with us today have participated in the first two sessions we've held, so I'm not going to go into a long introduction of our presenter, Mary Nahorniak, who is Google News Lab's U.S. Teaching Fellow. Mary, we're so glad to be with you again today to learn more terrific information from you. I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. I'm glad to be with you again. I've added the cheat sheet to the chat as I've done the last two times, and I've updated it with what we're going to go over today, which is artificial intelligence, machine learning, Google Web Stories, and we got a couple of interactive things too. So it looks like we're a small group. You're always welcome to put questions, comments, thoughts in the chat. Got it up on my screen so I can monitor it. And let me just kind of dive in for what we're going to go over today. So we'll start with some collaboration tools, and that's where we're going to get interactive. And I'm going to ask for Deanna's help in just a minute here. And then I'm going to share some just broad picture of how AI and machine learning are being used in newsrooms around the US, as well as walk through some Google Web Stories tools and examples. If you're not already building those, if you are building stories, I call them capital S stories for other platforms, so like Instagram stories, Snapchat stories. It's another format where you can do the same in that really swipeable, super immersive format that our audiences are really used to and enjoying. So to start for collaboration, I've already come to the part where I'm going to stop my screen share and we're going to ask Deanna to share hers. So she's going to visit this site, which is called Quick Draw. If any of you teach on the side, which many journalists do, this is a great tool to use in the classroom just as like an icebreaker, or they're coming back from a bio break, or you just see energy flagging. This can just be fun, but it does actually connect to our topic for today. So as I said, I'll stop my screen share. I'll let Deanna share hers, and she's going to go through this game called Quick Draw for us. All right, Deanna, you're up. So you'll need to share and also unmute because we're going to want to hear what your screen is saying.
Okay. I'm going to click share.
All right, looks good. Okay, so click Let's Draw and go for it.
Draw.
Are you drawing a blueberry? Just what it said to do. Okay, it wants to guess what you're drawing, Deanna. So it wants you to draw here it wants you to draw a wine glass.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
Got it.
I liked your doodles though. You get 6 tries, so this is just number 2. Here we go, wine glass. Oh, it got it. Okay, great. It looks like your computer sound isn't on. So go ahead and draw this harp, and I'll just tell everybody what we're looking at. So, okay. Yep, when you're ready, click got it.
Volume off. Maybe it's just not loud.
Oh, that could be.
Okay.
So if everybody can see these words at the bottom, it's saying, I see me, I see whatever. And then it said, oh, I know, it's a harp. And so there's this computerized voice kind of narrating what we see at the bottom there. So go ahead. You're gonna end up doing 6 of these. So you're, I think, halfway through. So it's saying, I see a line, and it goes, wow, I know it's a hockey stick. And it got it so fast on that one. Nicely done. So you've got bucket.
I'm not an artist.
That's okay. It's better if you're not. So now you're drawing a bucket, and now it's guessing cup, it's guessing coffee cup. It says, is it a mug? Oh, it's a bucket. I think this is your last one. Baseball.
I can draw that.
So there's a timer ticking at the top too. So that's where it's measuring the time. Oh wow, look at that. It got baseball from that picture. You can see it there at the bottom right in like 7 seconds. So well done, thank you. You can end your screen share if you wish, unless you want to keep playing.
Do that later.
Yeah, and I'll bring mine up. And let me just talk through what we just saw there. All right, so what was happening is that as Deanna was drawing, there are millions of drawings inside Quick Draw from everybody playing the game. And so what we're doing is we're adding, every time we draw, we're adding a picture to a repository of drawings about that image. So baseball, blueberry, hockey stick, etc. And for many of those things, we have this sort of like iconic ways that we think of drawing them, right? We're usually going to draw baseball from dead on, and we're going to draw those two little scenes. And as you can see, the computer was very quickly able to recognize it because most people probably draw a baseball the same way. And it doesn't have to be good for it to be able to figure out what it is. And so every time we're doing it, we are adding to that collection where there are already millions of images. So it's both reading from what's already there and going, this seems to look like all of these things, and then sort of comparing the two and saying, yes, I'm going to put it in that bucket. And we'll go a little bit more in detail on what all of that is in a little while, but that is essentially a machine learning model where we are saying, build a model, and we are saying, take all of this stuff and tell us what's happening here. You can do it with images, you can do it with a bunch of different things. So just so you know, so that wasn't just a fun drawing thing, although it is also that, but it's a piece of, you can see here, it's the world's largest doodling data set. So I bet you didn't know you were going to learn about that one today. So that's that machine learning model. All right, now I have an interactive thing for all of you. And again, we're a small group, so we'll see how this goes. But let me grab this link for, this is called a Jamboard, and I'm going to drop it in the chat. And I hope that you can see that. And so what I would like for you to do, I'm going to open it up as well, is bring this Jamboard up on the screen and show you what we're looking at here. And just make sure that you all can, anyone can edit it. Okay, great. So you all should be able to add to it. And so I have two questions for you about artificial intelligence. And so what the first is, what impression do you have of it? And the second is, where do you see artificial intelligence show up in your life? And the way that you can answer these questions on this Jamboard is by clicking on the sticky note button and adding a new sticky note. You can change the color. So we could just say, whatever, I'm just going to type artificial intelligence freaks me out, which is a normal way to feel. And you have yourself a little sticky note, and you can kind of just drag it anywhere you want it to go. So if you all would do that, I'll give it a minute or two, because again, with being a small group, if everybody doesn't want to participate, that's totally fine. And I'll even just share some common impressions of these, but it's a sneaky way too of me building in this extra tool and just showing you that Jamboard is this remote collaboration tool that you can use. If you ever remember being part of brainstorms where you're putting sticky notes like all over a wall and then categorizing them, it's just a way of doing that virtually. So I'll just give it a minute there. All right, so I'm just going to talk through a little bit of what I typically see here. So impressions that people have of artificial intelligence. I often hear this, that it's creepy. You know, people talk about the, can't remember the term now, the something valley. Now I want to call it Hidden Valley, but that's not right. That's the ranch dressing. Skynet enabled, yeah. There are often some fears, right, around like, is AI going to take over our jobs? What if it gets smarter than we are? But also that, you know, it's sort of all around us. So when we say, where do you see AI show up in your life? I often hear people say things like Amazon recommendations, Spotify song recommendations, like Alexa suggestions, a lot of stuff here. So I'll go back to the slides just a minute. Feel free to add your items here if you wish. And all of these tools, these are Google tools, but as I mentioned, there are plenty of others, Spotify, Amazon, et cetera, that are making use of artificial intelligence and machine learning in those tools every day. And I know that you have used some, if not many of these, YouTube and Gmail being some of the first ones to jump out, Maps. So a lot of artificial intelligence would be making educated guesses based on, in some times, your past behavior, in some cases, others' past behavior in an aggregated way. one that I think about for Gmail is if you use it regularly, either personally or for work, one thing that happens in the app is you get those suggested replies. And I find that mine are dead on for the way that I would typically reply. So they're like in my voice and not in a creepy way, just in a way that sort of matches if I might just reply with a thanks and an exclamation point or something simple. Also, as you type, you may notice in Gmail as well that it's like recommending finishing the sentence. So you might say, you might type, let me know, and then you sort of see grayed out if you have any feedback, right? Or whatever. It's making a guess and trying to save you some time. So those things just sort of get built in over time, and they start to make these tools easier for us to use. And for the most part, I find personally that they're helpful, right? That the recommendations are usually right on, or they're at least better than they used to be. Spotify, as it plays these automated playlists based on if I like this, that, and the other thing, I'm learning about new music that already appeals to me, and I get just a long stream of excellent music. And then Gmail, those types of things are saving me time, right? And they're saving me a little bit of brain power, which is limited on a daily basis for all of us. We only have a certain amount that we can give before our brains just say, we're done, put on the TV. And YouTube, of course, is where you would see recommendations. You may have seen photos like being categorized in a smart way. So AI is all around us. It's built into a lot of the tools that we use, and it's being added, and it's getting smarter all the time. Now, is it normal to feel skeptical about some of that? Absolutely. So I just want to sort of share that sort of broader picture of where it is. This is the tool called Google Lens. And if you don't have this app, it's really cool. It can translate a picture in another language, right? So perfect for travel is, what does this sign on the Paris metro say if you don't read French like I don't? You can, of course, use Google Translate to talk back and forth with another person. These two are showing if you hold it over an item that you might see in person on a mannequin on the left or in front of a building, giving you some information about that. Where can I buy this? What is this building? So just trying to help make sense of the world around you in ways that are personally useful, right? Again, travel, sort of where am I? I want to buy this, and making you not have to work so hard for things that in some cases didn't used to be possible. So Google Lens is a really useful app. Oh, Jimmy has a comment. He says, I've used Google Lens a lot and it works fairly well. I've used it to help identify plants. That is a great use case. Thank you for that. I've used a different tool and my husband uses another one. Neither of us has used Lens, but I totally want to use that now in my yard. So that's a great example of, it's just trying to help you kind of make sense, right? And I don't know that I could look up plants like based on their leaf shape in a hiker's guidebook very quickly and not knowing like very much at all about plants. So yeah, perfect use case. Thank you, Jenny. So in terms of artificial intelligence and machine learning, both of which I've talked a little bit about, let's just sort of break down what's different about them and how they work together. So artificial intelligence is the big umbrella over everything that we're talking about here. It's the science of developing intelligent applications and machines. And then inside of that is machine learning. So that's where you build a model and you're teaching the machine to do something through a lot of data input. And usually when you build a model at the beginning, you have to sort of teach it. Think of it like almost like teaching a pet, right? Or training a dog. So at the beginning, you're going to have to say ball, 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 ball every time you're teaching your dog, maybe fetch the ball. But after a while, your dog knows it. And occasionally you might need to say ball every so often. And so what we're doing in a model is at the beginning, we're saying, yes, this is that. No, this is not that. And over time, it gets smarter and it gets better at finding patterns. And it can do it and process and compute that information in ways that we can't do very fast. So it can take a bunch of data and sort through it really quickly. And then inside of that, we also have deep learning. So this is the stuff that usually gives people the willies, teaching machines how to simulate human actions and feelings. That's called deep learning. I personally don't know a lot about that, and I don't know that I need or want to, but it's important, I think, to simply know that's what it's called and that's what it exists, right? So let's talk more about that machine learning model. So just to break it down a little bit, as I've talked about it somewhat abstractly, but here we've got our model itself, and into that model goes a piece of data, And then we're training the model to start to be able to give us predictions and sort through data accurately and help answer questions. So that's what we saw as Deanna was making drawings, is the drawing was a piece of data. We're training the model. People tend to draw baseballs like this. They tend to draw hockey sticks like this. And then it gets smarter and smarter, and it makes those predictions faster. So sometimes she barely needed to finish the first line or two that she was making before it said, oh yeah, that's a wine glass. And it teaches to answer questions. So it gets better over time. So everybody that plays that game is using the model to play it and contributing to the model by playing it, which I think is just a really neat use case. And so this is just another way of saying what we're just talking about here. So this is the model, these are the sketches, and these are the guesses. And so you could build a model yourself. I'll show you a tool that you can use to do so in a little while. But I also want to just sort of keep talking through a lot of this stuff at this higher level, because I think this is important. So what's needed in order to use AI in newsrooms, and what are some of our fears, which we've talked about a little bit already. So we have needs. We need to be training on new technologies, part of why you all are here, and thank you for that. But we worry about algorithm biases, and that's an important thing to be talking about, right? Is who's writing the algorithms, what are their biases, and then what shows up down the road in that algorithm, and what does it sort of turn out? So we think about, like, of course, like Facebook, like Google, sort of what are we really, what's being built and what's being shown to the user, and what does that actually mean? We need more media literacy in our country. We know that, but the associated fear would be greater use of deep fakes or of cheap fakes. And so these, of course, are videos and photos that look like they're real, but they have been created or doctored to not be real. And so it gets harder and harder to teach media literacy in the environment where we have these things being able to be created by people. And cheap fakes are deep fakes that are easier and shorter to make. And so they can become more prominent, but they still end up tricking most people. We also know there are new jobs in our profession, and that's a need. But the fear is also that other jobs will be lost. So how can AI be helpful and also sort of help those of us that are working do our jobs better, so that we can do the things that only we can do? We talked about this when we talked about the pinpoint tool, which is if you're using, for example, the audio transcription, let the machine do that for you so that you can do the things that only you can do and that only you'll ever be able to do, like an interview, like a whole bunch of background research. So ways that AI can start to save us some time, because, as you know, we do have a certain number of minutes in the day and only a certain number of brain power that we can give. And then we know that our styles of journalism need to change and adapt to what our audience's needs are. And then there's the fear, of course, that tech companies would have control over publishing. And I've seen it from both sides of the coin, right? So I know these from being in a newsroom. I know what it's like from being inside Google. And so these are just some of the things that come up as we talk about this. So I just want to acknowledge that. If you have others, put them in the chat. Love to talk about them as well. Thinking about ways that these tools can help us. So how can machine learning help? As mentioned, audio transcription, of course. How will I read all these documents? That's where Pinpoint can help. What's unique about this text? That's where a model could be useful. How will I search through this photo, video, audio archive? Such a good question, right? I'm looking for all the pictures of this person. I'm looking for all the pictures that look like this. You probably, if you have an iPhone, get a lot of those like day in memories or whatever they're called. Sorting through people, sort of organizing faces, that kind of thing. Filtering comments from my readers. Oof, this is, everybody has experienced this, whether they're at the bottom of your story or if you are an editor that needs to monitor comments. At USA Today, we were just rolling out a tool called Coral when I left, which uses artificial intelligence and machine learning to filter comments, and essentially putting them through an algorithm for, I'm certainly looking for red flags, you know, curse words, things that we just don't want to have. Does this seem to be on the same topic as other people's? Is it from a trusted commenter? A whole bunch of inputs that can start to do that work for us, so that we just don't have the kind of human capital to be able to hand moderate every comment that comes through a website. So are there tools that can help do that for us? And they could do it pretty well. And we continue to sort of teach it. These are our standards. This comment is not approved. This comment is approved, that kind of thing. So those all use these technologies that we're talking about. And there are some news gathering tools that are interesting. In a few minutes, I'm going to share with you a resource where you can learn more about some of these tools. There's News Tracer and Linked Insight, which are developed by Reuters. So that's collecting news from Twitter. And then Linked Insight collects facts information from big files. If anybody has used those tools, I would love to know about it. I have not, but I'm interested in them. At Gannett, for a time, we used a tool that would actually write stories, so news production, based on real estate transactions. So for example, if a house sold, you could sort of build this model, right? If a house sells in my coverage area for 20% or more over the median, that triggers a story, right? Or something like that. And then it could write 2 to 3 paragraphs on this house at this address just sold for this amount. It previously sold in 2017 for this amount. You know, that is a blah, blah, blah increase. Most houses in this neighborhood sell for blah, blah, blah increase. All of that information can come from an algorithm, from a spreadsheet, and yet it can be turned into a story that is not the kind of thing that maybe is great for a reporter to spend their time on, but is the kind of thing that people do want to read, they do want to know about. So real estate news, things like agate. So a lot of things that, again, if a tool can help us save the time by doing that thing for us that feels like busy work, doesn't feel that interesting, then from, let's say you get 20 of those stories, if one of those is worth doing a photo gallery on, or worth going to talk with the former homeowners, or something that actually can become a story that a person really develops and becomes a wonderful read. So there are ways that these tools can help us. Just a couple of others that are on this slide. I'm just going to quickly show you. If you haven't ever used voice typing in Google Docs, it's pretty cool. And so I just typed in doc.new, it gives me a new one. I'm going to click on voice typing. I'm going to click to speak, and you can see that it is starting to transcribe what I'm saying as I say it. So this could be an excellent tool for if you want to narrate a script, for example, or you just maybe want to narrate your story, or you want to hold this up in addition to taking a voice memo of an interview, you also have this running. So maybe it's already beginning a live transcription for you. Can be good for running through slides or presentations, that kind of thing. Stop that. So I really like that one. And again, that's one of those things that could just save you some time. I think there are some interesting use cases for that. We briefly mentioned Google Translate earlier, but this is a way to translate articles. I believe that when I showed you all on our visualization week, the Flourish tool that I showed you an article in Spanish, and I translated it to English just by clicking a button at the top of the screen. Super easy to do. And then we've already talked at length about searching through big files using Pinpoint, and that can all help with news production. I want to share some ways that artificial intelligence and machine learning have been used in investigation. So I'm going to walk through a couple and go in depth on one or two in particular. So the first to share with you is from the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists, who we know from the Panama Papers and the Pandora Papers. So a very large consortium of journalists from across the globe. So this is a series on overfishing in the Pacific. It's a very data-driven investigative story, and reporters were trying to get their hands on the data and they just could not get it. The government said no. Finally, they got some data through sources, and the data in particular was about fishing ships and the weight of the fish that they caught. So what they did is they looked for discrepancies in that data. So I use the example of, like, if a house sells for 20% more than the average, triggers a story. Same kind of thing here. If this boat is bringing in more fish than it can actually hold, and looking for weird patterns within the larger data set can help point to that story. But combing through that data, super time consuming and needs a lot of resources. And it was also multiple countries of data. So they were able to build a model to find those data sets to actually show where is overfishing happening, and then tell the larger story of why, and where the boats are registered, that sort of thing. I love this one from BuzzFeed, and I'm going to go to it in just a second. So you can see in the headline here, they trained a computer to search for hidden spy planes. This is what we found. They're literally spelling out, we built a machine learning model, and it was the basis of our story. So I'm going to go to that story because I think it's pretty cool. Oh, why am I getting a 404? Here we go, redirected. Okay, so again, we trained a computer to search for hidden spy planes. What does that mean? Looking for weird patterns within the data set. Planes don't typically fly like this, or they don't typically fly over this area, or this one continues to do this pattern every day. And so I'm just going to scroll down to show what some of those look like. So this was a plane that was registered to a sheriff's office in Florida. And this is what the plane was doing. So imagine the plane doing this. And it shouldn't be doing that unless it's doing some kind of illegal surveillance. And also you can see the plane sort of doing these huge balls, which are just a bunch of loops over certain areas. Should show to a reporter, hey, so there's something weird here, right? So a flag in the data of something about this doesn't look right. This is a geo mapping plane that was essentially mapping the US-Mexico border, and we can see the plane's flights. And these are the types of things that they wrote about. Here is another one. So again, these are not typical behaviors for a plane. And so they are worthy of investigating and writing a story on. I'm going to actually drop the link to this article in the chat because I think it's just cool. And sorry, it's interesting that I put that GitHub thing in there. Anyway, you're welcome to look at those as you wish. I think they're pretty cool. If anybody saw this New York Times story last summer, it was on the 100-year anniversary of the massacre of Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And so what they did is they actually used machine learning, and they talk about it at the end of the article, what they did. They used a bunch of different types of maps and personal accounts of what the town looked like before this massacre happened. And this part of the town burned down. And so they're able to recreate a 3D model on the computer of what it looked like, because there weren't any records of that. And they talk about how they actually did so using machine learning and artificial intelligence. It's super, super interesting. It's also just a worthy story to read. So highly recommend that one. Okay, I hope that gives just an intriguing sort of broad picture of what's possible. And now I want to just share some resources for if that's something that you think you might like to look into. These are some good places to start. So this is a report on AI in newsrooms from the London School of Economics Journalism AI effort. It is definitely worth your time to check into. This is my favorite resource from them. You can find it here. Again, it'll be in your cheat sheet as well. This is their starter pack. So it's essentially, I'm going to go to it. It's a huge Google Doc sorted by topic. So here you can see these are actually generated using AI, these headlines. So can small and local newsrooms adopt AI? It might be something that you're wondering. Using it in investigations, as we talked about, leveraging your archives, using it for fact checking, all kinds of interesting stuff here. And then plenty of just overview, as we've talked about today. What do we mean by AI? What does that mean? What is machine learning? How are news organizations using it? A whole bunch of different ways. So I love this resource. It's in your cheat sheet, but I'm just going to drop it in the chat because I love it so much. So it's there for you. And there are plenty of things to just poke around and see as well. We also have this pretty interactive, it's sort of a graphic where you move through the alphabet. It's the A to Z of AI. I know that looks like a word you probably want to read and pronounce, but it's the A to Z of AI. It's from Google, and it just starts with a bunch of terms that come with learning about this technology and explaining some basic concepts. So another great resource for you as well. And then here is where I mentioned earlier, you can actually do a training to walk through building a model. So we're not going to do that here today, but if it's interesting for you, you can find it at our training website, which I mentioned before, g.co/news training. You would go find this one called Introduction to Machine Learning, and you're going to step through these different modules to help get to the point where we're actually building a model. So pretty cool. And again, what it does is it allows you to train a model for this is the kind of thing that we're looking for. We're looking for all these types of we've got all these satellite photos, and the thing that we're looking for is if we see like, I believe it's amber mining. So an amber mine from a satellite photo would look like this certain thing. And so we're teaching photos, yes, this is an amber mine, no, that is something else. Yes, this is an amber mine, no, that is something else. And over time, we don't have to do that because it starts to learn these are the features of what we're looking for in a photo. And now you can dump in hundreds or thousands of photos, and it's going to help you pull together a story of illegal amber mining. So it's pretty cool. And then again, once you've done that, the possibilities are kind of endless. It's up to you what you might like to do with those things. Well, this training is innovation. And so I think that's really the key here is how do we use these tools to help us do our jobs and help us find new ways of researching and reporting stories, storytelling, connecting with our audience, the whole publication process, not just up to pushing the publish button, but beyond that as well. So for Google, this is sort of where we see innovation being created right now and where we see it continuing to head. The last thing to share with you all today is on Google Web Stories. So as mentioned, this is our version of the stories, capital S stories, storytelling platform. The horizontal swipe, the super immersive on your phone screen type of story. You can find them at stories.google. I'm going to go visit it here in just 1 minute. And this is the place to get started. So what are stories? What are some interesting ones that have been created? You'll recognize these as you sort of scroll through your phone. They're very video and GIF heavy, but they can fully tell a story. So my former newsroom, USA Today, has been making web stories for quite a while. And if you have heard of them or maybe even tried to work on one, several years ago, they were very difficult for one person to build. You needed a number of people, including developers, to be involved. And now there are some tools that will allow you to do those much, much more easily. And I'll share what those tools are in just a moment as well. I'm scrolling here because I'm looking for one that I want to show you. This. So this was put together by somebody on my old team at USA Today. It's a look at a year after Kilauea on the Big Island of Hawaii exploded. So it's how the communities are recovering or not. And so this is when the eruption happened in 2018. And so this story was created in May and June of 2019. And we had sent a reporter who's also a photographer. I think we also sent a photographer and videographer as well to the Big Island to tell this story. So this was built, you can see we've got our navigation at the top here, which if you're looking at Instagram stories all the time, which I am, you'll be familiar with sort of where you are in time in the story. And then you really can get some good storytelling. You know, you have some very eye-catching photos, video, but you're also starting to learn a whole lot about this. This story itself was hand-coded, and it did take a good bit of time to come together. But again, now these are much easier to create. And I don't have the audio on, but you can see there are interviews included. There's a lot of immersive data as well. So let's go back. Oh, this one's very good too. I'm going to show you this just for a minute. This is from Vice. Two Sisters Burger Restaurant in Kenya. If you're looking at this and you're either already feeling hungry or you want to know more about it, this is a great story to check out. And you'll find it on that stories.google page. So they're influenced by American burgers. Excellent story. And so going back to the slide, so they used to be called AMP stories too. So just a little bit more background if this is ringing a bell or if you already know about it. When Google first released them, they were called AMP stories. Now they're called web stories. And they're a web-based version of the story format. So you don't have to be in any kind of app to use it. And we just looked at it on a laptop computer and it was still really engaging, but they are meant for phones. Whereas we know most of our audiences are looking at news. And you get to host it. So I think that's actually important. So I want to share this. It's your content, you own it, of course, and you host it so you get the page views, right? So that it is on your site. And I think that's a really, really critical piece of this that is different from other app-based platforms. Another one here, this is from Bustle, and it's just confirming that that's correct. Yeah. Oh, there are two. This one's from Bustle and this one's from Refinery 29. So on the left here, we have a timeline of how women got the right to vote. And it does acknowledge that when that happened, it was just white women, which is an important piece of that story. And then on the right from Refinery 29, how money is made. So the kinds of things that people just may have never seen that make for really engaging stories. We also have 30 plus videos on how to make these. So there's a YouTube playlist that's in your cheat sheet, and you can watch this friendly fellow give you a lot of instructions on how they can be created, what makes good ones, etc. So if that's something that you think your newsroom might like to do, you can learn more about it here. If you have questions about them, of course, you can always reach out to me too. These are the tools that can help you create them. So there's Make Stories and there's Newsroom AI. Both of these are tools that will allow you to build web stories very, very quickly, sometimes within an hour, instead of the full month that it took a number of people to build that killer whale one. So if you're going to dip your toe into web stories, these are two really important tools to learn about. And they're continuing to make them more available, more accessible to all sizes of newsrooms as well. Okay, so that's innovation. Those are a few things that are happening at Google, that are happening in newsrooms around the country using some of the newer technology. I want to thank you all for your time today and for your time over the last month. This was our third of 3 sessions. So I'm grateful for your time and attention. As mentioned before, you're welcome to reach out to me if you'd like any type of training for your own newsroom. I'd be more than happy to do it. I do have, if you don't mind, a survey on how the training went for you. And you can do it on your phone. So you can go to menti.com 6908-2300. Ooh, sorry, that's the wrong code. This code is changing every day. Let me actually drop the link into the chat. If you are on menti.com, I will put this is a new survey tool for us, so I'm getting used to it. So I apologize for the scramble here. So there's a direct link in the chat. And the code is, if you go to menti.com, I'm typing this in the chat, you can go to 9575-2910. And there is a very short 3-question, just do a slider on how you like the training. If you have feedback for me, I'd be happy to hear it. If you didn't like it, that's great. If you loved it, that's great. I will take all of your feedback. So do let me know. And again, I want to thank you, and thank you, Deanna, for letting me do these presentations over the last little while. It's been a pleasure.
I enjoyed it, Mary. Thank you so much. Does anybody have any questions that they'd like to? Unfortunately, you'll have to type it in the chat box. But if you have any questions about anything that you've seen today, we'll give you a minute to type it in the chat box. Otherwise, you know, she's given you the information on how to contact her if you want to reach out to her individually.
That's right. I'll put my email address in the chat as well.
Well, I don't see anything. We'll give it a couple more minutes.
Sure.
I went in and
here.
played a little bit with web stories myself to see what we could do. So it looks like we all have homework assignments.
If you do use any of these tools, I'd love to hear about it. Even if you don't have questions, if you just say, you know what, I use Google Scholar and I found a great source, or I just happened to search in a new way today and it got me where I was looking for a little faster. I love to know that. It also, I mean, I'm always glad to hear from you. And it's really helpful for me to tell other journalists about that too, right? So it just makes it feel really actionable, and sharing really real world case studies with folks.
Well, it doesn't look like we have any questions. Did get a comment from Steve.
Yeah. Thank you. You're welcome, and thank you.
All right. Well,
Great.
thanks again. And I really appreciate you being with us for 3 sessions.
Thank you for hosting. Hope to hear from you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye again.